Hey guys, it's Dan from Shasta Bubba Adventures, and I am at the Benchmark Trailhead on the eastern side of the Bob Marshall Wilderness. Just starting out on a new adventure, and this is going to be a kind of a intense one. I'm planning to float both north and south forks of the Sun River, so should be pretty good trip. And I'll confess that I'm pretty scared about the first part of this, the floating of the South Fork, because I've seen it from the trail and it looks kind of intimidating to me. But all of the beta I can find online says that it's 2+, nothing worse than a 2+ rapid. So should be okay. I keep telling myself to trust my skills. I've done worse than that, but it's always a little nerve-wracking floating a new body of water. Never know what's around the next corner. So I didn't sleep well last night being anxious about this, but I think that it's going to be a really fun trip when I'm done, and I'll feel better after I get past the first couple of drops. That's one thing that I believe is going to be different about the South Fork from the North Fork of the Sun. North Fork, there's rapids, but they're all boulders to go around and over. The South Fork has these bedrock ledges. They're kind of like drops, and that makes me a little more nervous because of the eddies, the hydraulics in the drop. So like I say, once I get over a couple of them, hopefully I'll settle down and enjoy the trip. But let's go see what it looks like. There it is, South Fork of the Sun. It's beautiful. The water level should be about perfect. It's about 650 CFS. It's a beautiful sunny day, perfect temperature. What could go wrong? I'm thinking that looks like a good place to set up and put in. One last look upstream. Here I am, all ready to go. Wish me luck. Hope it goes well. Okay. Here we go. Ah, man, nowhere near as nimble as it was. Okay, I'm fine. straight line. Okay. All right. Woo. Woo. Okay. That's fun. Yeah, baby. Woo! Woo! Now we're talking. Did not see that coming. Okay, well, this is going pretty good so far. Made some bad lines and didn't matter. Got through it. Ooh, that could have been ugly. That'll cool you off. Alright. Oh, pretty clouds. That's an interesting hydraulic. Woo! Woo! Okay. That's cool. I guess you could go around. That's the West Fork. Yeah, got some water now. Full in the face. Okay, there's an ugly situation. Looks like the duck is leading the way. That was close. Okay, well, that was sporty. That could be a problem at higher flows. That was a bit more than I was expecting. Yeah, you definitely do not want to keep riding around that corner. Show you why in a minute. Oh, baby. Whew. Okay. So that's where to take out, where my boat is. And that heads right into a nasty, unsurvivable canyon. Well, that took about 45 minutes to transition to backpacking, which I'm actually pretty happy with. I was thinking it would probably take at least an hour. So for the first time, 45 minutes, not too bad. But gotta get on the trail and see. I'm hoping, my goal is to knock off about 4 miles before camping tonight, so I can be within striking distance of the Headquarters Creek put in tomorrow's midday or so. So let's go. are just coming through the passage from Sun Butte to Arsenic Hill. It's sure a beautiful color and topography too. It's awful tempting to camp in those trees right there next to that gorgeous water, but I have good intentions to get myself up over Arsenic Hill tonight. That's going to be a major slog, but once I got it behind me, then the rest will be not as much trouble tomorrow. Probably only about halfway up. Just turned the corner. Not too much more elevation. Say goodbye to those mountains. We're just about through the little pass, and we'll drop down into the North Fork of the Sun. Pleasant little pass, except when it's been raining, and then it gets very boggy and can be kind of a trick to get through here. And here we are at the North Fork. Looks pretty good. Well, it's a little after 7 and I really should be making camp, but the place that I planned to stop wasn't quite as nice as I remembered it. Couldn't really find a really flat spot to put up the tent, and it's right next to some stagnant water, so the bugs were going to be pretty bad. So I decided to just push on about another mile. There's a stream crossing. I'm hoping that there'll be something there that I can make use of, but I'm not going to be very picky at this point. I've pretty much come as far as I needed to today to make tomorrow doable, so happy about that. Well, I think I found my home for the night. There's water just down that hill a little bit in that draw, so I just need to find a place to set up and call home. Looks like there might be lots of possibilities in the trees here. How about this? Actual campsite, complete with firewood if you want it. This is awesome. I am so glad I kept going. this is my water source. Not much of a water source, but it'll do, I think. Wouldn't want to try it much later in the year. I'm camped right over in those trees. What a magnificent setting. And the North Fork is just right there, down over the hill. So the sun is just about to dip behind the range of mountains there on the far side of the river. And this is a very pleasant sight that I found. I'm really happy with it. It's got an awesome view of the river valley and the mountains around. So really happy I kept pushing on a little bit. So my assessment of the South Fork of the Sun River is that it was pretty sporty. That was clearly a more challenging river than the North Fork of the Sun, I think. I'd have to agree with the people that rated it a 2+ class, although that one drop that I got out and did the scouting for, I think that probably should warrant a 3, just because of the tree across the middle. You really have to push hard against the current to negotiate around that, and then the drop. So that was a little more tricky. 650 CFS today, and that was very good level, but probably not optimal. I think maybe 800 probably would be a better height. Although that one sweeper that I went under, just barely snuck under, that probably would be a portage at a higher level. I don't think I'd want to do that river at 1000 CFS. There were a few places where there's rock walls that you get pushed into. A little bit sketchy, I think. I don't think that would be fun. Anyway, I've now gotten comfortable with rock pour-overs. There's certainly a bunch of those ledges, and when I was looking at them from the trail, that's what got me so intimidated, because worrying about the backwash getting bandersnatched into those things and tipped over. But they were no problem at all. Really happy with my Alpaca Raft Wolverine. That's so stable and it's maneuverable too. It took me a little while to get used to having all that weight in my butt. All of the gear from my backpack that was stuffed inside there really was a huge drag, and so it took me a little while to get used to navigating with that, but once I did, not too bad. Wrists are a little sore from the working so hard on the paddle, but really happy to have done that, finally get that anxiety behind me. And it was worth it. It was a fun float. So tomorrow, get to do the hike up to Headquarters Creek along the North Fork of the Sun, right by Gates Park. And if I'm right that I came 5 miles, that means it's about 9 miles to hike. I do have to confess that I'm really struggling with this 45-pound pack. Oh my God. I am so spoiled with my usual ultralight gear, and usually it's about 27 pounds. You wouldn't think that would make such a huge difference, but it's just really wearing me down. So 9 miles of hiking, I'll be ready to get on the river at the end of that. And so tomorrow we'll do that and float the North Fork. Should be pretty fun. See you tomorrow. Morning. Well, I had a good night's sleep and actually made a warm breakfast of oatmeal this morning. And amazingly, I'm packed up and ready to hit the trail at 7 o'clock. all of which are good things because I got a lot to do today. Got to hike that 9 or 10 miles and up to Headquarters Creek to the put-in, float to the North Fork of the Sun, and then I'm hoping that after I take out I can put in about 4 miles or so just to put me in good striking distance of the trailhead for tomorrow. So let's go. Looks like a beautiful morning. I was a little worried about some dark clouds coming in, but they seem to be blowing over and clearing up. Oh, it's clearing nicely. It's just a perfect temperature for hiking. Well, I made it to Circle Creek. That's pretty fun. And that means that must be Glen Creek coming down out of the mountains across the river. Sightseer plane heading for the Chinese Wall. Chinese Wall would be just maybe those peaks that are sticking up in the background there, just over in that direction. Maybe they're headed for Benchmark. There's a landing strip there. Well, last time I was here was just 3 weeks ago, except the big difference was I was traveling along Circle Creek instead of crossing it, and I have my paddle this time. That's a difference. Coming into the drainage of Headquarters Creek, coming down from Headquarters Pass, which means that pointy mountain in the background there I think might be Rocky Mountain. Thinking this must be Cabin Creek. Sure looks like it. I love this wide open spaces. Safe journey. I haven't seen anybody today either, so.
Me neither. I don't think there's hardly anyone back.
It's amazing.
It was left a few days ago and it's empty now.
Yeah. I had my closest encounter with the grizzly right here about 8 or 10 years ago. I just came up over this little rise and he was parked right there digging around eating some roots or grubs or something, and I put both poles in one hand and pulled my bear spray and I said, "Hey bear," all at once, and he looked up and looked square at me but didn't seem to see me. So I realized I was frozen and he couldn't see me because I wasn't moving. So I waved my poles and said, "Hey bear," second time, and he took off and went running back into those trees down there. And then it finally dawned on me to get my camera out. So I dropped my poles in the spray, whipped out the camera, and snapped just a couple of quick shots. But unfortunately I didn't get anything really good of him. Wasn't any problem, he just ran away. Forgot about this little dip down. I think the North Fork is actually on the other side of that little ridge. I think this is Headquarters Creek. This is Biggs Creek. Looks like kind of a nasty little ford. That'll cool you off. Almost there. So Gates Park is just through that cut there on the other side of that ridge, and that red mountain there is the way up to the north wall, if you ever want to see the north wall. And this is Rock Creek drainage going on up, and you just see a little bit of the Chinese wall right by Larch Hill. And there it is, the Pack Bridge, beautiful campsite, and that is the put-in right there. Fun to have a little fast corner right away. Water is so pretty, beautiful. Right over that Pack Bridge is this wonderful campsite where I have stayed before, right by the put-in. There she be. There it is, North Fork of the Sun. Can't wait. Well, the hiking portion of this morning went better than I expected, although it was still plenty strenuous. But it wasn't the nightmare that I was expecting last night. I don't know if that means my body got used to carrying the heavy pack, or maybe it's just an indication of how really worn out I was at the end of the day yesterday. So it still did take me 5.5 hours to get here. So I need to transition quick and get on the water. Okay, I think I'm finally all ready to go. That transition wasn't quite as bad, about 30 to 40 minutes roughly. Seems like you know, it helps to figure out what's going inside the pack versus, or what's going inside the boat versus going to be outside and wearing, and then separate those out right away. So still quite a struggle to get the pack inside there, but it works amazingly. It's kind of like a python swallowing a donkey or something. It seems a little out of proportion, but somehow it goes in there. So I've floated the North Fork before from here, so I have a pretty good idea of what to expect. Mostly rock dodging and boulder hopping, and there might be a little bit of wood pressure. The last time I did this, there was a channel-wide sweeper right around the first corner. But after that, there was nothing too bad, really. Just if you have to get out, there's a sandbar right there that makes it pretty easy to get around little stuff. And it's pretty active and splashy until about Moose Creek. And after that, it mellows out quite a bit. So that should be just right for lots of activity early, and then I can kind of cruise and enjoy and soak in all the beauty of the wilderness with the last half of the float. Incidentally, I did want to run you through everything that I'm wearing. So starting from the feet, I have my regular hiking shoes and wool blend hiking socks, and just added the neoprene socks to that. And then on the bottoms, I have some Pearl Izumi running biking tights, and probably any Polartec expedition weight Polartec would do. And some biking shorts. And then on top, still wearing my hiking shirt, which is from OR. It's the mesh quarter zip, which I really like, and it works great for both hiking and floating. On top of that, now I have the fleece vest. I didn't wear the fleece vest yesterday, but I was getting kind of chilly towards the end, and today there's a pretty good wind and more clouds, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to have the fleece vest on, and then a splash jacket from Kokatat. And of course, the biking helmet is the wrong kind of helmet for floating, but it's the only one I had, and I didn't really want to buy a floating helmet just for a couple of trips, although I probably will invest in that pretty soon because I'm loving the Packraft so much. I'm probably going to use it a lot more. And of course, life vest, PFD, and I'll put the name of that on the screen here. It's a pretty good, one of the lightest ones you can get, so good for pack rafting. All right, let's go get wet. Okay, 1:30. Let's go. This is going to be kind of tight. Whew. One of the things I love about pack rafting is getting to see these narrow canyon walls that you never get to see from the trail. Yeah. Woo. Wow. That's a fun feature. That was an interesting hydraulic. Man, check out those clouds. Those are amazing. It's so pretty. It's just overwhelming. How blessed am I getting to just float along a beautiful spring day in the Bob. Gorgeous mountains in the backdrop. Couldn't ask for much more. Not the most elegant landing in the world. Oh. Whew. Okay. I think this is where I want to be. Well, I made it to the takeout, which is just a little bit shy of where you normally would take out if you were going back along Gibson Reservoir and out that way. And I'm going to transition as quick as I can and get over to a trail over there that goes up over that rise and down back to the South Fork drainage. Okay, all packed up and it's 5:30, so just gonna do the best I can, get as far as I can so that I don't have as far to go tomorrow. But really, anything is bonus because I got all day tomorrow to hike out. So let's see what we can accomplish today. Got to climb up over the backside of Sun Butte. That might be a little taxing, but overall, this was a great float. I think the last time I floated, it must actually have been a little higher volume because at this lower level, 650, there's a lot of action, more than I recalled, but it was a lot of fun though. Just taking a little break on this crossover trail, and I forgot that there's a Y here, and looking at the map, looks like if I take the right road, it will give me a little quicker access to where I'm going. Might cut off as much as a mile to go, basically continue on the Moose Furman Trail instead of the cutoff over by the takeout for the South Fork. Isn't that something? Pretty inviting. Just see the South Fork there. And I'm wondering if this isn't the trail up to Bear Lake, which also looks pretty inviting. Well, that says it's the Bear Creek Trail, but I'm not sure. I guess that's where it goes. Doesn't look like much of a trail to start with. Someday I'm gonna go up there though. So now, how about that for gorgeous? This is Bear Creek. It's 7 o'clock and I was hoping to hike till 7:30 at least. Haven't quite made my 4 miles that I wanted, but this is such a fantastic campsite. I just can't pass it up. Right on the South Fork, right next to Bear Creek. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stay here. That's just, doesn't get much better than this. Well, I just can't get over what a wonderful campsite this is. Well worth stopping. And it was probably good for me to stop too. I was getting pretty pooped at 7 o'clock. Total mileage for the day looks like 25, and that would be 10 miles hiking this morning and 12 miles floating and about 3 miles after the float getting over to here. I think I might have miscalculated the overall mileage because I definitely hiked 5 miles last night before I camped. So I think that the distance from the takeout on the South Fork up to Headquarters Creek, that pack bridge on the North Fork, must be 15 miles instead of 14, thereabouts. So the North Fork was pretty challenging, a little harder than I expected really. I think that some pretty impressive little drops. Overall, both of these rivers are just great fun for someone with intermediate skills. Definitely not beginner level, but you don't have to be an expert. It's 2+ is pretty accurate, although I still say there's a couple of class 3 spots on the North Fork. That one where went over the rapid and then right into that wall, that was getting kind of sketchy, and especially at higher flows, that would be a lot of push into that wall. But still, made it through just fine. The Alpaca Raft Wolverine is still doing awesome, way more stable than I was led to believe. And I am really happy, by the way, that I got the self-bailing instead of the spray skirt, because the spray skirt would have been so much more difficult to, in and out every time. And really, the self-bailer wasn't cold. Really, I was just fine wearing the gear that I told you about, getting splashed all day long, and wasn't a problem. So I'm really happy that I went with that one. So I'm just getting ready to actually have a hot dinner for once, and looking forward to chowing on that and then hitting the sack early so I can get up early tomorrow and make my way back to the trailhead. It's going to be a very pretty hike, I think, in the morning. Might be a little cooler. It's supposed to be about 15 degrees cooler, so we'll see if it rains or not, but I don't mind it being a little cooler. So that's it for today, and I'll see you tomorrow. There's my rather picturesque bear hang. And there's camp over there. Well, good morning. I'm all packed up and ready to go, although a little reluctant to leave this beautiful spot. Camping right next to the river almost makes me want to go float the South Fork again, but I'll have to wait for another time. I'm hiking out today and should be just about 11 miles, I think, so solid half day or a bit more. Although I'm getting a good start at 7:30. I'm glad to get a good start on the day so I can get to the trailhead and have a reasonable drive home. It's about 40 degrees this morning, so a little chilly, but one of the benefits of carrying a heavy load is I'll warm up quickly. One thing occurred to me when I was talking about these rivers is that I did not have to portage a single time on either river. That's really unusual and really nice to not have to deal with that scary situation. Amazing though, I don't think I've ever floated the North Fork and didn't have to portage. And South Fork, I would have expected would be the same thing. It's funny, I've traveled the trail along Gibson Reservoir and over Sun Butte to the north, and also the trail that follows the West Fork of the South Fork, which is the main approach to the Chinese Wall and White River Pass. I've traveled both of those trails several times, but I've never been in between on this pretty prairie area. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that and seeing what that's like. Let's go. It's just stupendous. Well, if I hadn't just floated this, hiking along here looking at this river sure would give me an itch to be floating it. Wow. That's pretty impressive. Come around that corner. This looks like another really nice campsite, maybe about 3 miles on from where I spent the night. Well, whoever decided to call this pretty prairie is a master of understatement. I'd call it stupendous, not to mention enormous. It's taken about over a half an hour to hike the length of it. And we're just now coming up to the Pretty Prairie cabin right there. That looks like an excellent place to camp. Kind of has the appearance of a big hunt camp, but really all along here, those clumps of trees all look like would be good places to camp over by the river. I was about to keep going and I spotted the sign, had to come over and see what it said, and that would make it an even better place if people obey that. Beautiful. And the cabin's just right over there. Yet another great campsite. This is at the very end of the Pretty Prairie and right at the junction where the spur trail takes off to go to that Pretty Prairie cabin. That, I think, is the confluence of the West Fork and the South Fork of the Sun. That's the way home. There was somebody camped right down there on the tongue of the confluence when I floated the South Fork. We have to do a big jog out that way to the west to go over the Pack Bridge. I guess normally there is a low water trail that you can cut off across here and up there, but not now. It's way too much water to be able to ford that safely. That's looking up the West Fork of the South Fork and the trail going towards the Chinese Wall. Howdy.
How you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem. Hi, pup. Howdy.
Thank you.
Pretty horses. Hiking along this stream, it occurred to me that it might be a fairly decent beginner trip to put in at that Pack Bridge, which would be a 5.5 mile hike to the put-in, then float the West Fork down to the South Fork, and pretty much you would miss all the spicy stuff. It gets pretty mellow after the confluence, and you would have to navigate a little bit of the wood like right here, but I haven't seen much of that, so I don't think it would be too bad. And of course that's an easy portage on the sand spit there. And then hike back out, I think it's 14 miles, back to Benchmark. Isn't that cool? Listen to the wind scream through all those dead snags, ghost trees. Well, that wind has made me have to put on the wind shirt, and it's definitely cooled off a bunch since this morning, strangely, when it was blue skies, and now it's all clouded in. So might be ending this trip perfectly as the weather rolls in. I was wondering how much up and down there would be on this trail along the river, and it really was negligible, almost nothing, until you turn the corner at the confluence. And then following the West Fork there does climb up on the hillside a fair amount. So I don't know how much cumulative, maybe 500-600 feet, so it's not terrible, but it is a bit of a workout. is the major junction between the South Fork Sun Trail and the West Fork Sun Trail that continues on up and goes to the Chinese Wall. And there is the Pack Bridge. Well, that Pack Bridge marks the return to the known territory for me, and because I have hiked this before, I know that it's a very boring, monotonous trail this last 5 miles. Although, technically it is part of the CDT, if you're keeping track of that stuff. I did want to show you the little glimpse of the South Fork that I got from the trail years ago that seared in my memory the anxiety and fear to do this trip. Doesn't look like much now, does it? Well, was this the perfect pack raft trip? Darn near. You got an equal balance of pack rafting and hiking. You've got the very exciting floating without being terrifying, and the views and scenery that never stops whether you're floating or hiking. You know, I think there's two things that could have made it better. First would be just a little more water. If it was more like 800 CFS instead of 650, that would have been better, a little less rock rubbing. And I did this in 2.5 days. I think if it was extended to 3.5, that might make it a little more enjoyable and less stressful. So the way to do that would be to float the South Fork the first day, take out camp down by the base of Arsenic Hill, then second day just do the hike up to the North Fork of the Sun, the Headquarters Creek Pack Bridge. And then you could float down. That only takes about 3 hours to the takeout, and that would leave you lots of hiking time to get within striking distance of the trailhead on the 4th day. So all in all, as close to perfect as you can get, although the weather's kind of coming in bad today, but still I'm close to the exit, so I don't mind that too much. Thanks for coming along. It's been an awesome trip, and I appreciate your subscribing and going along on these crazy adventures. See you next time. Take care. And here we are, back to the Pack Bridge where it all began. There she is, waiting faithfully. Oh man, good to see.